Hi, welcome to Second Earth Alternative. This is Felipe Osario. So, what an interesting episode we have today. This may not be the newest episode if you've never heard, because the article that I'm referencing is from 2011, but it's certainly the first time that I've heard about this. And when I did some research, not that I just realized that this might actually be legitimate, and what I'm talking about is underwater Stonehenge in Michigan. Yes, I'll say that again. In Michigan, we're talking about an underwater lake in Michigan. What amazes me about this is not does it just seem like these structures might actually be real, but I've hardly heard about this. It surprised me that I couldn't find anything on the internet. So I wanted to just start off by reading this article, Stonehenge-like structure found under Lake Michigan. While scanning underneath the waters of Lake Michigan for shipwrecks, archaeologists found something a lot more interesting than they bargained for. They discovered a boulder with a prehistoric carving of a mastodon, as well as a series of stones arranged in a Stonehenge-like manner. At a depth of about 40 feet into Lake Michigan's Grand Traverse Bay, using sonar techniques to look for shipwrecks, archaeologists discovered sunken boats and cars and even a Civil War-era pier. But among all these, they found this prehistoric surprise, which a trained eye can guess by looking at the solar scan photos in this article. And yeah, if you take a look at the photo, I'll zoom in as much as I can. You can kind of see the little structures over here that they're talking about. When you see it in the water, you're tempted to say it's absolutely real, said Mark Hawley, a professor of underwater archaeology at Northwestern Michigan University College, who made the discovery during a news conference with photos of a boulder on display in 2007. But that's what we need the experts to come in and verify. It's hard to do analysis just on this image, but just based on our photo analysis, we went ahead and took this image and we just did some cropping. We corrected the perspective just slightly, recropped it again, and check it out. What happens when we start putting some filters. We increase the size, and look how we start actually seeing elephant. I mean, this is when we increase the size. Look at this. You can kind of see the elephant already. And I'll just show you the end result that we have. Here is what we think to be the elephants. And if you take away the color, you can still see it very clearly. Let me show you. So, yeah, to me that looks like an obvious elephant. It doesn't look like some random natural carving, you know, one of those weird Jesus toast paintings or whatever you want to think of it. But here's the thing is, before I did this analysis, I didn't realize that there were other images, more modern images of this mastodon. And take a look. Yeah, I think this is almost kind of an independent confirmation that what we thought to be an elephant, look, I mean, this is as obvious as it gets. So obviously these structures, there's something to these structures. And I just want to read this off real quick regarding this Lake Michigan Stonehenge, because I think this is kind of well said. And this is from the Anthropology Department of Michigan State. So we're talking about a well-respected university. So let's read. The stones are organized in a circle 40 feet below the surface of Lake Michigan and is believed to be at least 10,000 years old. And if you know anything about Stonehenge structures, you know that Göbekli Tepe is thought to be at least 12,000 years old. So this is an interesting connection. One stone in the outer circle, although still up for debate, appears to have a carving of a mastodon, an animal that closely resembles an elephant that went extinct over 10,000 years ago. Of course, the logical question is, how did stones end up under one of the largest lakes in the world? The only explanation I could find was that local could have created the structure during the last ice age when the lake bed was dry. So, you know, if the lake bed used to be dry during the last ice age, maybe there is something to this idea that a comet struck Greenland 12,800 years ago, created massive melting of glacial water that was dumped, and perhaps that was related to the flooding story. Perhaps all of these catastrophes and the fact that these stones are now underwater, maybe they could have a simple common explanation. There was even a blog done by a man named John Harrison. Now, I did some research. He apparently is one of the supervisors for grants, for providing grants for students. And he kind of talks about it as in a very matter-of-fact type way. Stonehenge is creepy enough as it is, but finding another Stonehenge underwater, that's just too much for us to handle. But that's exactly what divers found, though. In what we used to think there wasn't a very mystical place, Lake Michigan. The lake isn't well known for archaeological mystery, so when divers found the ring of stones under the water, it was a huge surprise. The structures look like the Stonehenge on the British Isles and got constructed in 10,000 BC. And once again, I just want to talk about this date because if you've been following some recent research on archaeology, you will know that there are certain ideas. I think Robert Schoch, who had done studies on the Sphinx in Egypt, had concluded because of the weather pattern that the Sphinx was likely 10,000 years old. Could this perhaps, since the Great Pyramids just happened to align to Orion's belt 10,000 years ago, could this perhaps mean that the Great Pyramids were also that old? And if you want to get even more eclectic with this, I think Edgar Cayce talked about how these pyramids might be at least 10,500 years old according to his predictions.
How was this particular Great Pyramid of Giza built?
By the use of those forces in nature as make for iron to swim, stone floats in the air in the same manner. This will be discovered in 1958.
Yes, Earth's magnetosphere was discovered in 1958. We actually made a whole episode about this finding, which to us was accidental at the time. We didn't know about this. It wasn't like somebody just told us. It was just, we were looking into Edgar Cayce and then found out reading, and then sure enough was able to verify that, yeah, indeed there was something that happened in 1958 that also seems to make his reading have some legitimacy. You might be wondering how I came across this information, and, maybe I should just show you a video. Because a lot of this, I should give credit to a man you probably know by the name of Graham Hancock. And sure enough, he, as you can see with his images, he has his own version of Stonehenge. So let's go ahead and listen into what he has to say about underwater structures.
Further north settles it for me off Okinawa, which is about 400 or 500 miles north of Yonaguni. There is a majestic stone circle 110 feet beneath the water, which again Santha and I have dived on extensively, which Schoch has not seen, there is just no way on earth that monument could have been.
Do you have photos of this online?
Yes, we do. We have photos on my website.
Yes. Oh, man.
And in the underwater section, you're going to see a stone circle somewhere there with somebody above it holding a video camera. That's me holding the video camera.
Oh, yeah.
And down below you is a stone circle. And there's probably some more shots of it. I'm going to just come around and see what you're looking at there.
I was looking at this right here. Is that it?
Okay, yeah, that's the stone circle. This is the central upright, and these are the surrounding uprights.
Yeah, that's somebody made that. Get out of here.
I think some of these ruins, they're not always in the exact same location as Japan. I think some of these I think this one's 400 miles from Yonaguni. But, these are really, I think you might have seen this before. This is one of the more famous images that have come out regarding underwater structures that have been discovered in the last decade. To me, it looks pretty startling. But the location that we're talking about that was 400 miles away from this is this one. And that's the one that he had discussed on the Joe Rogan show. And, what I wanted to show you guys, which I thought was so interesting, is that when you look at this image, it doesn't look that special, right? But here's what we went ahead and did is we took this image and we batched it in Photoshop. We realized after doing some lens correction filters that it was probably shot with GoPro, so we went ahead and did the lens correction for that. Then we increased the size, we put some extra layers just to try to bring out some details and increase the contrast. Then the most important step is then we created a depth map for this image, which is essentially kind of trying to tell the program what three-dimensionally it might look like. And then we took it to After Effects and rendered it in 3D. And hopefully this is a way to kind of show you guys what this structure may have looked like to the divers when they're actually diving in real time. So let's take a look. When you actually analyze this in more detail and you take a three-dimensional approach to this image and you actually render this image in 3D, it looks pretty artificial to me. What does it mean that so many structures that look like Stonehenge seem to be dating back to 10,000 years? In short, what I can say from my simple opinion is that probably humanity is a lot more complicated than we have in our records. I think Graham Hancock makes a great point that the North Americas is this incredible land that has been there for a while, and humanity might have been there for, who knows, maybe 100,000 years. I think in Joe Rogan, they were kind of making comment that John Anthony West believes that the Great Pyramids, even though they line up to the precessional cycle of 10,000 BC, that maybe it was the previous precession, maybe it was 30,000 years ago. So what I'm thinking is that obviously Stonehenge are calendrical calendars. So one thing to note is obviously these people were very smart. They were very capable. They were able to build very precise megalithic structures. But in a deeper way, it also seems like they had a certain worship, but maybe the better word would be that they kind of honored these celestial events. That this idea of from above, so below was perhaps something that was understood universally throughout many cultures, hence how prolific the zodiac calendar is. But what interested me the most was this idea that humans wanted to build this huge symbolic structure, that it was make it timeless in a way. Anyways, this might be some old information for you guys, but for me it was brand new. I thought it was pretty amazing. I'm pretty shocked. If you look online, you'll see very little information on it. So the question is, what's going on? Why are the academics not jumping on this? Does it go true face and face against their preconceived notions of what the world is? I think if you talk to Graham Hancock, he probably agree with that notion. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Now, I can do this type of episodes a lot more often. If it's something that doesn't bother you, let me know in the comment section. If it does bother you, please let me know. We're always trying to improve this episode with comments and feedback. So thanks again for joining me. This is Felipe Osorio, signing out.